Vytautas, Mr. Vytautas, he was granted an annual scholarship for his studies results from the Research Council of Lithuania in 2022. His research articles were presented in scientific journals and international conferences in Lithuania, Ukraine, Taiwan, and Austria. Vytautas Germanavičius postdoc project 2024 to 2026 has won EU support from the Lithuanian Research Council and is currently being implemented at Kaunas University of Technology. He's also, of course, he's a composer, and make it very short. It has been performed by prominent orchestras, ensembles and soloists in many international contemporary music festivals throughout Europe, North America and Asia. Vancouver, Vilnius, Stuttgart, Zagreb and so on. Germanavičius' music has been commissioned by the Lithuanian Council of Culture, the Lithuanian Philharmonic Society, festivals of contemporary music and performing ensembles in Lithuania and abroad. Please welcome our presenter.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to the exciting symposium. And my topic, it's kind of extension of my dissertation. And it's related to the Lithuanian folk songs and intervals. So I measured intervals, but I needed to how to find the accidentals to notate it. Because in Lithuanian ethnomusicologists, they use kind of different kind of accidentals. I mean, it's so I started to think about to standardized accidents because we have no standard accidentals. But we have only quadritones and sextones in Sibelius, for example, notational program. So, following his previous analytical studies of Lithuanian folk music recordings, specifically focusing on the interval structures of vocal and instrumental scale systems, I have observed that many of the intervals do not conform to the standard distances defined by 12-tone equal temperament. This divergence reveals a clear need for additional accidentals to more accurately represent the microtonal intervals characteristic of traditional Lithuanian scales. Historically, the notation of Lithuanian folk music scale system has not been incorporated into standardized pitch notation framework. Instead, deviations in pitch were typically indicated by various ad hoc symbols which signified imprecise interval distances. Up to now, microtonal accidentals have been standardized only for quadritones and sextones within software environments such as Sibelius. This limitation poses a challenge which attempting to notate more smaller microtonal intervals which are often present in both traditional and contemporary music. This presentation proposes a systematization of music notation through the introduction of newly developed accidentals for microtonal intervals smaller than a quadritone. These symbols were selected and designed based on comparative analysis drawing from Western notation traditions, established microtonal notation practices, and global precedents for making small pitch deviations. The development process also involved the creation of new forms for these accidentals, enable standardized and consistent notation in modern compositional context. One of the earliest notation systems developed to indicate interval relationship within model frameworks by appending auxiliary signs to accidentals, such as sharps or flats, was proposed by Maurice Hauptmann and later modified by Hermann von Helmholtz. This system is detailed in Helmholtz's foundation text on the sensation of tone as a psychological basis for the theory of music. In this notation, plus and minus signs are used to specify variations in interval size and pitch direction. For example, if a natural major third is formed above a given fundamental tone, the second tone is marked with plus. A natural minor third is marked with a minus. A Pythagorean minor third is represented with a vertical dash, and a natural fifth is marked with plus minus. Additionally, subscripts are placed next to the second pitch to indicate how many syntonic commas the interval has been lowered. For instance, a natural major third is notated as C plus E1, and a minor triad is written as A1 minus C plus E1. A similar system was later developed at Karl Eitz and used in Murray Barbour tuning and temperament, a historical survey. In this system, the sequence of Pythagorean intervals is notated using superscript positive or negative integers to indicate the number of commas involved. For example, a Pythagorean major third above C is denoted as C minus E0, while a natural major third is marked C minus E minus 1. An expanded symbolic notation based on Pythagorean tuning, which accommodates higher prime limits, is presented in the Helmholtz-Ellis-Wolff-Monceau system. This approach utilizes AC, two symbols, and prime factors as documented in John Monceau Tonal Encyclopedia. While this just intonation system provides highly precise symbols for notating pitch alterations, composers have also developed alternative staff notation methods for practical performance. James Tenney, among others, adapted natural intervals into cent-based measurements to facilitate accurate pitch tuning with electronic devices, allowing performers to verify intonation using modern tuning tools designed for precise musical instrument calibration. In the early 60s, composer Ben Jonson proposed an alternative approach to microtonal notation. He redefined the conventional system of accidentals, originally limited to the sharps and flats of the 7 white key pitches, by introducing additional accidentals designed to present pitch alteration and extended just intonation, including intervals derived from high prime limits. This method builds on a principle that was widely accepted by 16th century music theorists, that an accidental placed before a note acts as a frequency multiplier, altering the pitch by defined ratio. For example, the sharp sign was understood to raise the pitch by a ratio of 25 by 24, effectively transforming a minor third into a major third. Jonson's system adopts this theoretical framework and expands it significantly. He introduces a set of new accidentals, each corresponding to a precise frequency ratio. These accidentals multiply a note's frequency by a defined constant, allowing the intervals to ascend as far as the 31st harmonic and descend to the 31st subharmonic. In Jonson's notation system, a major scale based on C is tuned according to just intonation, where the fifth formed between D with a 9 by 8 ratio above C and A, 5 by 3 ratio above C, is 1 syntonic comma lower than the Pythagorean perfect fifth. To indicate this microtonal deviation, Jonson adds plus or minus signs next to the letter names of notes, denoting the number of syntonic commas, by which pitch is raised or lowered. As a result, the sequence of perfect fifths appears. You see the tone A, E, and B above F, C, and G are tuned as tonic major thirds. Jonson extends this approach by introducing new accidentals to notate intervals based on high prime limits. In the slide, you can see accidentals for 7, 11, and 3 limit just intonation. Through this innovation, Jonson constructs a comprehensive and precise system of pitch notation based on extended just intonation. At the very beginning of the 21st century, composer and violinist Mark Sabat, in collaboration with composer Wolfgang von Schweinitz, developed an alternative system of notation symbols known as the extended Helmholtz-Ellis just intonation. This system enables the precise notation of all intervals, including those tuned by ear. Their method builds upon the classical system outlined in Hermann von Helmholtz's book mentioned earlier, in which Alexander Ellis introduced the cent as a unit of measurement for interval size. Furthermore, the system extends Ben Jonson's intonation concept of extended just intonation. With Sabat and von Schweinitz designing a unique set of symbols for denoting rational pitch relationships involving high-limit harmonic ratios. In their notation, Pythagorean accidentals appeared with new microtonal signs, enabling the representation of every pitch in the harmonic series through comma-based alteration. The system developed by Mike Sabat and Wolfgang von Schweinitz returns to the origins of musical notation, specifically to the cycle of pure Pythagorean fifths. For notating chromatic semitones, standard accidentals are used but are modified by the addition of a 24-cent diatonic Pythagorean comma. The natural major third is notated by adding a narrow symbol that narrows the interval in comparison to the Pythagorean third, following the tuning logic of a 3-limit Pythagorean and 5-limit just intonation. For instance, in the sequence just major thirds, if the tone E remains fixed as an open string on a violin or guitar, then the Pythagorean G sharp must be lowered by 22 cents to give a just major third. This is indicated with an arrow. Similarly, all other thirds are notated using these adjustments. For example, to tune the just major third C, E, the tone C must be raised by 22 cents. For example, by one syntonic comma. To preserve a natural third between A flat and C, the note A flat is further altered using two downward arrows, a sequence of pure major thirds. As in Ben Jonson's extended just intonation within the 5-limit tuning, we encounter 3 distinct versions of A flat, each representing a different pitch height. However, the extended tuning system or temperament generates entirely new accidentals, for instance, representing intervals based on the 7, 11, and 13 harmonics. In the harmonic ranges from 16 to 31 and 32 to 64. These prime limits gives alternative interval sizes, which require distinct notation symbols to accurately represent their tuning relationships. The full set of the open source notation symbols and fonts can be accessed via the Plain Sound Music Edition website. The sagittal notation, the Latin sagitta meaning arrow, was introduced by George Secor and David Keenan in 2002. At the time, they were unaware that had proposed a unified and systematic symbolic principle capable of notating nearly any possible microtone. Secor's system was originally designed to represent alteration in 17, 19, 22, 29, 31, 41, and 72 equal temperaments, using a set of arrow-shaped accidentals. These symbols indicate comma-sized interval modification within prime limit tunings based on rational call number frequency ratios. Sagittal notation is applicable in both just intonation system and various equal temperaments, with a graphic structure of each symbol encoding the size and direction of a pitch alteration. Thus, the shape of a symbol inherently conveys the variable size of an interval being notated. In this system, natural intervals are notated by following the cycle of 12 Pythagorean fifths, while in equal temperament context, the system uses the closest available approximations to intervals within the chosen tuning. For example, in just intonation, the arrow symbol appended to an accidental, typically representing a syntonic comma, corresponds to intervals such as the major third, major 7, minor 6, and major 6. When additional symbols are introduced, even smaller comma-sized intervals such as 7 by 6, 11 by 8, and others can also be presented. In equal temperament, the system adopts temperate approximations of just intervals as a structural basis for marking temperate interval series. For instance, instead of tuning by 3 by 1 ratio, the octave may be divided into 19 equal parts to the best approximation. For 5 by 1 ratio, a 28-tone division may be chosen. In such temperaments, natural commas are either replaced with temperate approximations or disappear entirely due to the nature of tuning. Sagittal notation alongside the system developed by Johnston, Helmholtz, Ellis, Sims, Wood, and others is included in standard music font layout, smooth specification. Originally initiated by Steinberg, this standard is now maintained by the W3C Music Notation Community Group. Additionally, W3C has extended microtonal representation by introducing new symbols known as the Stein-Zimmermann accidentals, which include many symbols not encoded in Unicode. These are formally categorized within the smooth specification. The internationally recognized standard for quarter-tone notation, the Stein-Zimmermann system of quarter-tone symbols, along with its extended version, incorporates arrows to indicate smaller microtonal intervals. Interesting, when developing this system, Richard Stein chose to use sharp-based symbols to represent quarter-tones, while Bert Alva Zimmermann adopted the flat-based symbols. However, the use of sharp symbols for quarter-tone notation dates back much earlier. Italian composer Giuseppe Tartini proposed such signs in the 18th century. The Stein-Zimmermann quarter-tone sharp accidental is graphically represented as half of a sharp sign, while the free quarter-tone sharp signifies one and half sharps. The quarter-tone sharp symbol may appear in several graphical variants, including one or three diagonal lines combined with two vertical lines, or with varying numbers of vertical and diagonal lines. The Stein-Zimmermann quarter-tone flat is depicted as an inverted flat sign, and the three quarter-tone flats consist of a combined inverted flat and regular flat. This is similar in principle to the double flat symbol, which in some versions appears as two distinct flat signs, and in other as a compound symbol with a shared stem. These quarter-tone symbols have been integrated into a music notation software such as Sibelius, contributing to their widespread adoption among music professionals, and now considered part of the common Western music notation system. In early historical periods, quarter-tone symbols were often indicated using accidentals with arrows. However, in contemporary usage, arrows are no longer limited to quarter-tones. They are now employed to notate even smaller microtonal intervals. Arrow-based quarter-tone notation can still be found in many 20th century scores. Notably, in the work of Derby Ligeti, many 20th century composers sought to create individualized notation system, which may explain why accidental symbols were never fully unified. A wide range of these notational practices is documented in Frank Rejewski's book Dictionnaire de musique microtonale, which includes a classified table of quarter-tone notation symbols used by European and American composers. Since these notations have now been encoded in the Smoothful standard, there appears to be no pressing need to retroactively standardize earlier quarter-tone notation by converting them into Stein-Zimmermann accidentals. The next logical step in the standardization of microtonal notation involves dividing the octave into 8 tones or 12 tones. In such case, arrows are added to the standard accidental symbols. And within the Stein-Zimmermann notation, this has become the norm for 8-tone notation, though arrows are also occasionally used for 12 tones. In 8-tone notation, this leads to symbolic duplication. For example, a half sharp with an upward arrow may represent the same pitch as a sharp with a downward arrow. However, in 12-tone notation, no such duplication occurs. As the intervals differ, the distance between the accidental and its arrow counterpart does not equal the same pitch. All these microtonal accidentals are included in Smoothful as part of the extended Stein-Zimmermann symbol set, with the assigned code ranging from U plus E290 to U plus E29F. But these accidentals were not actually proposed by Richard Stein or Bernd Zimmermann, but are instead logical extensions of their symbols adding arrows to provide options for notating slight pitch modifications. Nevertheless, quarter-tone, 8-tone, and 6-tone notation is implemented in the Omicron, font developed in IRCAM Science Laboratory. Quarter-tones are written used using Stein-Zimmermann alteration signs, while 8 tones are indicated by adding upward arrows. 16 tones are marked by modifying the arrow. A line added to the tip of the arrow indicates a 16-tone raise. The font also offers symbols for 3rd tones, 5th tones, 6th tones, 7 tones, 10 tones, 12 tones, and 14 tones. Smoothfill and the music notation software MuseScore also provide a wide range of notation symbols for marking microtones of various sizes. However, 3rd tones, 6 tones, 8 tones, 12 tones, and 16 tones still lack a universally recognized notation standard. Perhaps because these microtones are used much less frequently in practice than quarter tones. For the notation of intervals in Lithuanian traditional vocal and instrumental music, a just intonation notation symbols was not chosen. This decision follows analysis of some examples, which revealed no single tuning or temperament system that could be definitely assigned to traditional scales. Therefore, for further analysis and selection of symbols with the goal of proposing a unified system of alteration, signs or to notate intervals in Lithuanian folk melodies, the Stein-Zimmermann and Omicron notation standards were selected. The Stein-Zimmermann standards are implemented in many music notation programs for marking quarter tones and 6 tones, although notation for other microtones has yet to be standardized. Therefore, the alteration signs for tones used to notate Lithuanian traditional scales were selected from these recent accidentals. In the top 2 blocks of the table, the quarter tone and 6-tone accidentals are selected from the Stein-Zimmermann notation standard. Since the notation of other microtones is not standardized, the symbols for 8 tones and 12 tones have been constructed by appending arrows to standard symbols, drawing on sources such as Omicron and the graphical notation classification provided by Stein-Zimmermann. The 16-tone accidentals is taken from the Omicron system, which does not include flat-type accidentals. In this system, arrows are used according to clear notational logic. For instance, in 8-tone division, a quarter tone with an arrow equals to 2 by 8 of a tone, where 4 by 8 represents a semitone. In the 16-tone division system, an accidental, okay, go back a little bit. Okay. In the 16th division system, an accidental symbol with 3 arrow lines representing 3 successively joined sides of a triangle forms a complete triangle symbolizing microtonal values within the range of quarter tone. In this case, I chose to modify the standard accidental by adding a single arrow representing one side of a triangle denoting a 16-tone. Thus, the proposed accidentals are composed of select standard symbols combined with custom elements based on the specification of 2 distinct notation systems. The font was created using the font creator software, and modified versions of the symbols were based on the non-build font. In the table, each microtonal alteration symbol is assigned to a single key on the computer keyboard. In the first row, the numbers 1 through 6 represent 6-tone and from 7 to 0 quarter-tone symbols. In the second row, the letters from Q to Y and from U to O denote 8-tone and semitone symbols. In the third row, the letters from A to H correspond to 12-tone symbols, and in the fourth row, the letters from Z to N indicate 16-tone symbols. It is important to note that when designing the accidentals, all microtonal symbols except for the quarter-tones were arranged in a sequence from the narrowest to the widest microtonal interval. The standard sharp symbol for the semitone was used as a basis with arrows modeled and attached to it to form the new symbols. For example, these arrows are drawn in the 12-tone and 16-tone symbols and modified in the 6-tone and 8-tone arrow designs. Meanwhile, not all standard symbols have flat-type alteration signs, 8 tones, 12 tones, and 16 tones. Therefore, different arrows were applied to standard flat semitone symbol. In the new font, the 16-tone arrow has 1 flag. The 12-tone arrow has 2 flags. A third side flag added to the bottom of the 8-tone arrow forms a white triangle, and the 6-tone arrow forms a black triangle. This arrangement corresponds to the Schenck sequence of microtonal intervals, which culminates with the quarter-tone alteration symbols. Using an analytical and creative approach and based on an analysis of contemporary notation systems, font represents a newly developed typographic resource intended for a precise notation of microtonal accidentals in modern music systems. Specifically, the font includes accidentals for quarter-tone, 6-tone, 8-tone, 12-tone, and 16-tone divisions, provided a comprehensive solution for composers and theorists working in extended unique systems. Fully compatible with Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and other word processing software. This font, Germanavičius, allows for effortless insertion of standard and extended accidentals such as sharps, flats, naturals, double accidentals, and microtonal symbols directly into text. In addition, a new font is designed for integration with professional music notation software, including Sibelius. This font was created as part of postdoctoral research project Kaunas University of Technology with the support of the Research Council of Lithuania. You can download free this font and just you have to copy it to your computer and open and install. That's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for this amazing lecture. Vytautas. Sorry, I had to leave for organization things. Let's copy the code for you. And yes, we are also very good with the timing. Thank you for this as well. And I would like to ask in the group if anyone has any questions. Would that Gerda, please?
I don't have right access to our homepage, but we have the Lily font.
Yes, but some of them are also created with the Lily font, the previous.
Yeah.
Yes, the Omicron maybe.
The main Omicron, yes, but I usually these both.
Yes, good idea. We should put this code in the eclectic website. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, we put this immediately also with several suggestions for notation on our homepage.
Yeah, but we don't have this new one.
No.
Yeah, but we
Just wanted to mention.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Actually, expect to work with what, but we tried in Sibelius and yeah, you can use it, but I don't know if you can use it automatically because it's an integrated system, but you can download and install.
Anyone has any experiences with integrating microtonal accidentals in Sibelius? No, okay. It's something I guess very specific. And, any more questions, please?
Okay.
Comments?
Lots of.
Yes, you're Simon? Lawrence. I'm sorry, it's a few faces.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about what about the Lithuanian scales pointed this particular system?
Yes, actually, question why I chose particular microtones and notation because after my dissertation I did analysis of the vocal instrumental music. The music was taken from kind of recordings before the Second World War, like 36, and the next research I was taking recordings from United States, from Smithsonian Institute and collection in Lithuanian community in Chicago. We have resources, the immigration before the First World War and after. So I measured intervals, the distances, and I compared also with European tuning systems. So I didn't find any kind of particular temperament, especially it was a lot of natural intervals and natural tunes. Some songs were very natural tunes. But what is interesting that if you compare the Lithuanians immigrants in the United States, and the same song was recorded in Lithuania. It was a different in tuning. Actually, I spoke with the last conference in New York about this research, and some intervals were more equally tuned in the United States.
More equally tuned.
More equally tuned, yes. Close to equal tuning.
If you wish to see this lecture Vytautas held in New York, the Ecumenic YouTube channel, you can find all the lectures we have there. Yeah, YouTube Ecumenic Music Society will be right there. Any more questions, please? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And so, big welcome for the second time. Alyssa Aska is fascinated with the architecture of music, both spatially and temporally. She composes works which explore extremes in time and space, using rigid proportions to generate forms in acoustic works, and exploring the unpredictable, irrational, and lack of control in gamified works. This is closely tied to her compositional style, which is concerned with a delicate balance between elements of functional form and elements of pure aesthetic purpose. As much structure as possible, as many ornaments as necessary, and vice versa. She believes in a carefully balance between craft and emotion in her music. Her passions include the study of ancient cultures and Stargate SG-1, both of which have influenced her life path and compositional aesthetics. So please, let's welcome Alyssa Aska.
Thank you so much. And so my talk is about unlocking microtonal harmonic potential with digital dynamic retuning systems. And I'm going to talk about a few pieces I recently composed for E-organ and E-piano, how that becomes microtonal I'll get into, but a little bit about me, for anyone that doesn't know me, because I see quite a few people I don't know. I'm a composer. I currently am based in Graz and Vienna, and my background is originally in computer music, and so I was a computer musician first, and then I started to do acoustic composition, and due to my computer music background and interest in historical music and tuning systems, I started to work a lot with microtonality, especially because I really like this intersection of the sort of physical characteristics of sound and tuning with harmonic series and with this sort of historical perspective. And so today I'm actually going to explore the potential of electronic keyboards with dynamic tuning possibilities. And so basically what that means is I'm using electronic keyboards to not just have pieces with microtonal tuning or different tuning, but that I am actually able to change the tuning during the course of the piece and that it's some kind of expressive feature. I'd like to talk about a couple of pieces some of the first pieces I wrote for microtonal E-piano that were somewhat inspired by ancient tuning systems. The first is Tune Down, which is microtonal E-piano solo, and this is inspired by the concept of ancient Greek tetrachords, and the other is Tune Up for enharmonic E-organ and microtonal E-piano, which was inspired by something I saw in some music theory writings where a lot of people were talking about this ancient Babylonian treatise on how to tune a specific string instrument. I think it's important to talk about what opportunities are afforded by E-keyboards, because I specifically mentioned that I'm using E-keyboards rather than pianos, and I know that it's very possible to use, for example, pianos, you can retune them. There's a lot of people that have used acoustic pianos to achieve other kinds of tuning systems and devices, such as magnets you can put on the strings to adjust the tuning. But with E keyboards, you can actually do this by just sending digital information numbers. And so it's actually quite easy. There's no physical requirements, and it can be extremely, at least theoretically, extremely precise. And all of the works that I'm going to talk about use two things. One is an e-piano with this interface with Mac software that can retune it in real time. And the other is an enharmonic organ that is an E-organ with an attachment that gives 5 extra keys per octave. So here's an example of the Mac software that I use. It's actually designed by Martin, who's going to talk next. And basically in this example, you can see where it says manual tuning. You can basically specify any kind of tuning you want. And this is how I interface with the e-piano and how I specify my tunings and my pieces. Of course, you can do many other things, which I'll also talk about later. And this is the attachable key system that allows for the organ to be enharmonic and have 17 keys per octave. It's maybe a little bit difficult to see, but you can see after the wires maybe a bit better. There's keys on top of all of the black keys that create a sort of split key system that's removable. And so it's like a portable split key system. And with this way, I can basically get all of the enharmonic keys, at least for the black keys, on the organ. So I told you I was going to talk first about these two pieces, tune down and tune up. And tune down specifically is inspired by ancient Greek tetrachords. And I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this, but ancient Greek systems were very tetrachordal, so they used basically collections of 4 notes. And there were 3 types of these primary types, diatonic, chromatic, and enharmonic, and they were characterized by not the space between the first note and the last note, which was always a perfect fourth, but the intervals between the first and second and third notes. And there were so many different versions of this. For example, just out of one book, I found already 4 different types, and there were actually more described, but this is just 4 different types of diatonic tetrachords with various types of tuning. The reason that some of them are described in steps and some are described in ratios is because that's actually how it was written, how maybe they read it in the original sources. But I used sense there just to show a little bit of an idea of what the steps actually look like and that there were differences. But it also shows that they had different ways of thinking about it. And then also with chromatic, there's various different ones. And again, with enharmonic. But I think the main difference between the 3 is that in enharmonic, it's between step 1, 2, and 3 is like quarter tone, and in chromatic is a half tone, and diatonic is a whole tone, with obvious differences. I will play a short excerpt of this from the beginning and then from the end, just so you can hear, and then I'll explain what I did with the tetrachords in the piece. So basically at the beginning and the end, she's actually playing the exact same notes. And so throughout the piece, I basically shift the tuning. In the score, there's an instruction to basically set the max patch, different tuning. And so 6 times throughout the piece, I change the tuning. It starts with one tuning, and then gradually steps become lowered and lowered so that the tetrachords go from a more diatonic to further chromatic and then further enharmonic. And I do use different specified tunings. That's the reason I showed you that there were many different tunings of these tetrachords, because I don't just stick to one. So that's the process of the piece. And what's interesting about this is that, of course, the written score, it's always the same line and the same notes that are written throughout the piece, but they actually sound different because they're tuned. So there's that aspect. And it's a way to get these pitches without adding extra keys to the octave. The second piece I'm going to talk about, Tune Up, was actually inspired by just looking at many different documentations of this sort of treatise. It was a tablet that was found that described how to tune scales of an ancient Babylonian string instrument. Of course, it's deciphered in many different ways, so many people interpret it in many different ways. But the general idea was that there is this scale, and to cycle through all of the different scales, it was this sequence of tuning each string up. And so it was very similar to what I just did in the piano piece. I was tuning one thing down and down and down, but in this case, it's up. And I was kind of inspired to use this because I was writing a piece for the microtonal E piano and the enharmonic E organ. And as you saw, the enharmonic E organ has these 5 extra keys per octave, so that it has all of the pure major thirds. And the difference with the enharmonic notes is 41 cents. And so some of them are 41 cents higher, and some of them are 41 cents lower than the pitches on the actual instrument. And I thought it would be interesting to basically take the 12 pitches on the piano and retune them all up 41 cents, kind of like this sort of sharpen each string situation, so that by the end, some of them are in tune with the existing pitches and in the beginning, and by the end, some of them are in tune with the added pitches. And so basically, the notes systematically shift over the course of the piece, all up 41 cents to focus on the specific intervals. This is directly from the score, just so you can see it's quite clear. There's this first tuning. It starts in quarter comma mean tone, and then in tuning 2, you can see F sharp or G flat, because this is the 12-tone keyboard. There's no enharmonic pitches. Is tuned up 20 cents. And in the tuning 1, it is minus 21, so I've raised it by 41 cents. And there are 13 different tunings. And so here's you can see the first tuning and the final tuning, that everything is up 41 cents. And at the very top, those 5 pitches are the added keys. So you can see that by the tuning 3, actually some of those are matching. So it gets further away from the natural, but also it goes towards this, the added keys. And I'll play just a little bit of this. so those were two pieces that I worked on where I was specifically focused on changing the tuning in real time, because I thought that was something interesting and unique that the microtonal E-piano could do. It's something that an acoustic piano can't really do quite as easily for obvious reasons. And I thought it gave a very valid reason to use this instrument. And following this, I started to actually focus more on the microtonality as a timbral effect, and focusing on ways in which that could create interesting timbral sounds in works. And so I created two pieces for microtonal E-piano and piano, ET and Attack and Decay. And they both explore this, but more with like the idea of timbral effect rather than functional microtonality, where I would say the other two pieces really focused on more functional microtonality. And so ET focused on very small differences between the piano and the E-piano tuning. And so, for example, the E-piano shifted between three different tunings based on harmonic series. So I say based on harmonic series because I basically tune all 12 pitches to notes, discrete pitches that would appear in a harmonic series. So obviously there's things missing. I don't have like the 25th partial, but I have, for example, like G sharp is the 13th partial, etc. And E is the 5th partial, for example. And then it shifts from this C to D to E. And this creates interesting timbral content because it has this, I created two different ways of kind of this disjunction between the tuning of the E-piano and the tuning of the acoustic piano. First, the acoustic piano is of course equal temperament, but also I do use harmonics in the acoustic piano in this piece to sometimes give a little bit of a different color, especially because piano harmonics aren't necessarily in tune in the same way that the precisely tuned harmonic scale that I created in the E-piano is. And so I'll just play a little bit of this with the score actually. change, but you can hear how it's really kind of used in this timbral way and not necessarily in a functional way. So finally, with this, I thought that the one thing that I hadn't really explored yet in this realm was the use of continuous control. So again, my background as a computer musician, I also, before I was working with acoustic instruments, I worked a lot with gestural controllers. So I created a lot of gestural controllers where I would use data to create electronic music. And so it was data-driven music. And the use of continuous control, volume control, is therefore a very interesting aspect that I hadn't really explored. It was always just sending messages in a sort of terraced way to max to change pitch. And so the first thing I did was I thought I'll do something very simple. I have a piece for piano and E-piano called Attack and Decay, and I just used the pedal to adjust the volume and to kind of focus on developing a sort of means of where the sustain pedal of the piano, or one of the, I mean, it can be any pedal of a MIDI piano, can be used to adjust the volume of the MIDI envelope. And so in this case, the E-piano was just simply using one tuning the whole time based on the C harmonic series, and the pedal was used to control the envelope. And so the E-piano was then used in a similar way as in the previous piece, where it added this sort of slightly out of tuneness that gave a timbral effect, but also for this kind of resonance extension with the pedal. And so I'll just like play the first couple of chords so you can hear the effect. Basically what the performer on the E-piano is doing is holding the pedal down to strike the pitch and then lifting it up to allow the volume envelope to open. And it's kind of interesting because this actually presented a performance practice, a novel situation. Of course, using the microtonal piano in the past has been interesting for the performers because you don't always hear what you play. And so sometimes what actually is sounding will be very different from the expected result when you're pressing keys. If you tune the piano, you can tune it to basically anything. So you could really tune it in, I don't know, like 150 EDO. And then obviously it will sound very, very different from what you're actually playing. And so there is that aspect. But in this case, it's also very different because when you press the note, you don't hear it right away. And so you don't actually know what the volume is. And so it requires, I think, a little bit more getting used to physicality and the expected sound. And so I found that an interesting aspect to explore. So the last thing I will show in the realm of continuous control is something that actually does involve gesture tracking and motion tracking for microtonal effects. So I've done some exploration in motion tracking of figure skating movements. I think it's specifically interesting for this kind of situation, volume and tuning control, because of the nuanced ways in which movement is generated in figure skating. There is difference in rotational speed, difference in all the axes of movement. And so I did some experiments with some figure skaters and recorded them wearing these devices. And I just thought I would explore seeing how this could be used with these keyboards to actually create a continuous control of microtonality to create some kind of tuning, intonation, and timbral effects. And so I'll just play these short clips. with the same processing, but slightly different, a different person's a slightly different movement. And already the intonation is differently changing. Experiments in how to change basically organ pitch over time, because I was looking into the limitations of these instruments and how I could use digital tools to unlock them, and I found that was kind of an interesting way to go beyond the limitations of the fact that once you press a key on the organ, like regular organs, you can't actually change it, and here you can. So that's so far everything I have.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. I'm sure there are a few questions, and I would like to ask first in the group. Who wants to go first?
So it's a very simple question, but when the skaters were skating, by the way, I love this, it's fascinating, but when the skaters were skating, were they listening and conscious of the sound, or was that separate?
Actually, they, no, this was added separately. They were doing choreography to a completely different song.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So no, actually, that's why the movement was completely due to, or the change in the sound was completely due to their movement.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because you could imagine if they were in control of the sound as well, what
That's-
would they do?
Yes.
That's the eventual idea.
Yeah.
Yes. I also didn't understand really how the movement was influencing the pitches. Can you explain a little bit more?
In that case, that was complete, like, it's experiment that I've just done. But I took the gyroscope data and the Excel data on X, Y, and Z axis,
Mm-hmm.
and applied one to volume and one to basically scaled it to modulate the pitch between about plus 40 and negative 40.
Mm-hmm.
And because the gyroscope data is both negative and positive, because of this, then the pitch goes both up and down. So that's why when they turn really fast, you could, for example, hear the microphone really, really clearly, because it's based on this rotation. And so when they move, it will influence the volume. That's why there was such this connection with the volume and the movement. And when they turn, it was then influencing. And depending on which way they turn and what axis, then it kind of influences the movement.
Okay. And probably the speed as well.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, congratulations. Great experiment. Yeah. Anyone, please? Alyssa, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I especially like the first piece for piano and e-piano, and also I think the rain came at the perfect perfect timing. Just a simple question. As a pianist, I'm interested in resonances and microtonal pianos. So what kind of sound library do you use?
That was the sound library on the e-piano.
Okay.
So that was kind of, I think we have eventually plans now to use other sound libraries, but in this case, the idea was we were doing everything really cheap and simple. So it was like, what can you do with the instrument you have? And, so yeah.
So what piano is it?
Oh my gosh, well, it's like Yamaha.
Yamaha, okay.
Some kind of Yamaha.
63, I think.
Yeah.
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 Okay, thank you.
One other question. I read USA. From which town do you come?
It's complicated. I was born in Wisconsin, but I actually really grew up in Eugene, Oregon.
And where do you make your research?
Graz and Vienna.
Here. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I see.
I'm just interested in this, what do you call it, the Babylonian plate. Where was that found? Do you know?
I don't know when it was found. I mean, I probably read it, but I read honestly so many documents on music archaeology at the time. But I get there's a lot of different. Every scholar seems to interpret it in a different way, and I think I mentioned a couple. The reason I showed many here is because I think there are many different interpretations. So people kind of disagree about whether there were 9 tones or 7 tones, and but this name, Leon Crickmore, is one of the scholars that wrote about it a lot. That probably would, and then Richard Dumbrell has written a ton on ancient tuning theory, but he also seems to be kind of controversial, or at least argues with a lot of. There's a lot of controversy in music archaeology somehow. But yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking because I was around this area quite recently, and you said you had a piece called Iti.
Yes.
And Iti is a Babylonian expression for.
It's actually ancient Sumerian.
Sumerian,
But it means
Sumerian.
moonlight. Yeah.
The meaning is
Moonlight.
moonlight.
Ah,
Okay,
moonlight.
yeah, that was one of my questions as well. And maybe you're familiar with Harriet song? You know
Yes,
tune?
the Hurrian song. Yes, exactly.
Do you know the tuning of this song? Maybe.
I've actually this is something that was described in many of the documents, and people even disagree about. I looked at like many different transcriptions of the Hurrian hymn too. It's quite interesting actually because there's no like. I mean, there's some people that kind of a group that universally agrees, and then there's a couple that disagree, and whether it was monophonic or polyphonic, even they can't. No one knows.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's really interesting actually.
Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't know, the Hurrian hymn is like considered the oldest.
Yeah, I think up to date is the oldest
Yeah.
found. So,
One additional question to Graz. Is there a microtonal class of Bernhard Lang? I know Bernhard, he is working a lot. I saw the name Klaus Lang, but there is the other composer Bernhard.
Yes, so the unfortunate thing is I think Bernhard Lang retired 2 years ago.
Okay.
And Klaus is now at the MDB, but actually I was very fortunate that before we transferred the project there, he did instruct this microtonal or historical tuning system class at the COOP one time in Graz. It was one time, and I was very fortunate to attend that.
Super.
I would like, for those who don't know, I would like to mention that Alyssa was in a team of 4 people, I
Yes,
think, 4
yes.
researchers 2 years ago, and they were presenting this project Frescobaldi too,
Yes.
right? And it's published, I mean, you can also see this lecture on the YouTube channel, and the article is published on Microtonal, Mikrotöne is Most Beautiful, number 5. Yeah, and now when I was reading your CV, I understand now, because now it's about your compositional ideas, I understand how important this ancient culture passion is in your music, yes? Yes. And any more questions, please? Otherwise, may I? Again?
Absolutely, ask away.
Because I'm just curious. I don't use electronic music, I just instrumental. For many years actually at the beginning, but then I understood, these years I'm still instrumental music. But this of the tune down, for example, tune up, when you change, is it possible to do it in a specific gap of time, or it's like click and then you get the new tuning?
I mean, it's all in Maximus P, so the way I did it is just click in a new tuning.
Okay.
But presumably you could, using the timing systems within Max, of course, right?
Yeah,
You could
yeah,
do it. If you
I-
wanted to make an, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Okay, my brain, because, if I think of a guitar, it's not straight away that you need a time gap actually for this, so I was
Yeah.
very curious about this
Yeah, yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, no, you could actually set some kind of parameter that it randomly retunes the piano the whole time when you're playing.
Just wait, it's coming.
It's coming, yeah, he'll write a piece on that. Just make it-
No, that's literally what my pieces are I'm about to talk about.
Oh, yeah, that's
And what about, are performers happy when they use the pedal, or they prefer an assistant?
So, I think he might also talk about this a little bit because he used this, but in a different way. The way I did it, it was so grained with the, like, I mean, the score is looking a lot like the score I showed, where there were the two, and there were points of coordination. It wasn't always necessary that they coordinated. I mean, it's the same with the other piece. It's quite clear that sometimes it's important and sometimes it's not. But what's really what was really confusing for, I think, the acoustic pianist specifically is that the score says they play a note here, but actually the note doesn't sound until a little bit later. And so for a minute, there was this confusion about, are we together? Why are we not together? What's going on? And then she came and saw the score and realized what the pedal, and realized that the pedal kind of delayed this, and then understood. So I think it's a matter of, it's a performance practice that they have to get used to kind of understand, like, okay, because also you kind of have to push the keys blind in terms of the volume, and then lift the pedal and then see. So that's
yeah, for the brain.
Yeah.
Confusing, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. And, any more questions? Okay. So congratulations and thank you so much. So we continue with another fascinating lecture by Martin Ritter, a series recent works for Microtonal piano, which is part of a big program in Austria. It's a program for research. Yeah. So Martin Ritter studied composition in Canada and currently lives in Graz. Vienna, work in Vienna. He writes both electronic as well as instrumental works and is performed across Europe, North America and Asia. As a composer, he's interested in the spaces sounds emerging from the intersection of music, technology and performance or performance practice. In recent years, he has started to explore microtonality as a conceptual space for his work. As a researcher, he works with digital tools in order to analyze and understand electronic music. His music and research are featured regularly at conferences and festivals such as VII Modern, Mikrofest Helsinki, ICMC, NIME, EMS, Audio Mostly, eContact, Impulse, Darmstadt, Composet, Muscan, Tenor, Ars Electronica, etc. He has received scholarships like the Joseph Armand Bombardier Canada Graduate Scholarship, the University of Calgary Technologies International Incorporation Fellowship Scholarship, Alberta Innovate Technologies Future Scholarships, the Joseph Emerita Candler Scholarship for Advanced Music Study. He founded, co-founded, or is on the board of several arts and organizations such as Zeitschleife, the Andere Seite, EGCM, Graz Orchestra of Noise and Distortion. He holds a DMA in composition from the University of British Columbia and a PhD in computational media design from the University of Calgary. At the Universität für Musik und Darstellung Kunstgraz, he studied with Klaus Lang and Dr. Marco Ciciliani. He currently works at the University of Music and Performing Arts Vienna as a senior scientist. So please, let's welcome Martin Ritter.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so as you probably have gathered, I work with Alyssa, so I'm probably going to see familiar pianos and hear familiar piano sounds now. I'm going to talk about a collection of pieces I started writing in 2022 for piano solo and also for piano plus another instrument. So this is an overview: 3 pieces for solo and then 2 pieces for piano, one with acoustic piano, one with the Frescobaldi expansion. So familiar territory, so I will skip some of the details there. We had them already. I want to talk a little bit about the patch and how it's structured and why we did this in the first place. So the idea was initially to be able to retune the piano and e-piano in real time, and so have a dynamic retuning basically, but without the need for extra hardware or extra software. That's why, as your question was, for what sound library do we use? We used what was on the piano. That was a very integral part of the concept early on, that we didn't want to have to buy piano tech or other expensive software or add hardware to our what we had. And then in terms of the patch, it's already showed that, and I go live to Max in a second. But my sort of idea was that we have different modules that do different jobs, and that if a composer comes and they are not really programmers or fluent in Max, they can sort of take the EDO module and just put it there, and there's a very easy way of interfacing with that. So they don't need to know how it works, they don't need to go deep into it and do any actual programming. You just put it there and it will do the job it says it does. The same with the, we're going to just between the octave. Yeah, so let's see if it works. I go to Max. I don't have a keyboard, so I'll have to fake it. And I'm not sure if the sound is going to come through here or through here, so we'll have to just see what happens. Okay, I was already finished the video here. So, very briefly, the heart of everything is the poly module. So that basically keeps track of all the pitches, what we're tuning there in, and if they're supposed to be sustained, released, all the nitty-gritty things. On top of that, as I said, there's like the EDU module, the octave detuning, and the overtone piano. I'll talk about that later. That is specifically for one of my pieces. That take in basically the MIDI pitch from the piano, does some calculations on that, calculates an offset that is then stored in the poly module to be sent back out to the piano to be synthesized in the new tuning, and some transpositional stuff in between. Because we can do everything on the fly, I could say 2 EDO, whatever that means. That means we really go beyond the MIDI range. So our pitches are way too high and way too low. So that's just an easy way of telling the program either truncate those pitches, don't go above or below the MIDI range, fold them back into the MIDI range, wrap them into the MIDI range. Those kind of very useful things. So I'm just going to see if we can get that to work. So now we're in 12 EDO, but I can just and yeah, and it is instant. So. And now you hear the wrapping around, because I keep going up and it keeps going down. And if I keep going, it will wrap from the low back to the high and just mirror alias back and forth. The other one that Alyssa used in her pieces a lot was the manual octave tuning, and it's basically each pitch is just detuned to whatever is specified here, and that is the same for each octave. So there is no it's not an equal division of the octave, so it is the same for each. So I don't know what tuning this is here. Yeah. So it's a very simple patch really, but already just with those two very simple modules, you can do quite a bit. And I should change something here. So just before I move on to the actual pieces, things that sort of need to be done or that I want to explore more with the patches, more custom options for your detuning, retuning needs are always nice. So those need to be explored and implemented. Being able to use Scala files for complex tunings, be able to load them, but also then save your tunings out in the Scala files. So you might be able also to use it in other places, in other architectures, would be nice. Right now there's some issues with sticky notes, as you will hear in some of the pieces. Sometimes a note isn't playing even though it's supposed to play. I haven't quite figured out if that's a software issue or a hardware issue, because the piano isn't meant to do what we make it do, so we might just be overloading it at times. It's a little bit of a difficult situation to really pinpoint what is going wrong. One of these days I will have time to really figure it out, but not yet. And then of course I just got Max 9, so I need to dig into what is new, what kind of an overhaul the whole architecture needs to kind of bring it up to date, including the new JavaScript upgrade that Max 9 came with, because right now the underlying logic is just using the dictionary objects in Max itself, and it is really messy, really complicated, and really impossible to maintain. So I'm really hoping for a really nice JavaScript implementation shortly. But maybe in 2 years when I'm back. Okay. The first piece I wrote for this was in 2022 for our inaugural conference that we are organizing in Graz, or have been organizing in Graz every year, now shifting to Vienna. My idea for especially the solo pieces, all three of them that you're going to hear, was to really test the limits and testing different limits of the software, of the hardware, and of the pianist, quite frankly. And he is very afraid seeing me when I come with a new one of those pieces. So for this, the first piece, it is literally, and I'm showing the score in a second, it's literally just C's. Pianist is only playing C's in different octaves, with very occasional different pitch in the left hand. The right hand only plays C's, and the right and the left hand have their own tuning, I would say, but the computer decides what that is. Between 9 and 16 EDO, it changes at random. So the pianist doesn't know what's coming. We don't know what's coming. It's an interesting situation. On top of that, the piano itself is in local control on, which means we hear the original pitch as well as the detuned pitch at the same time. And I'm using the piano as a player piano. And that's just the patch, so the right and the left hand have two different EDO modules. But what I mean by player piano is that the incoming MIDI messages from the piano get delayed by certain amounts, different for each hand, which means that as the piece progresses, there's more and more delays of earlier portions of the piece being played back in different tunings than we heard them originally. So we get this avalanche of material that we kind of heard but not really heard And the second half of the piece, the pianist is actually not playing anymore. We just hear the unfolding of all the delays and all those different tunings. So yeah, that's the score. As you see, it's C's, C's, and more C's. And because it's, go back, because it's really short, I'm going to play the entire piece as 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, something like that.
It looks very harmless.
Yeah, it looks very harmless. It is not.
At least, yeah, you're very nice composer.
I want to add
performer.
Just one thing. When it says there's the sostenuto pedal, this is what triggers the recording of the material into one of those delay lines. So it adds another layer of difficulty for the poor performer, because if he goes a little bit too soon or a little bit too late, we get the wrong thing, or we don't get it into the delay line because it is MIDI based, not sound based. So if the on message already went and he clicks the pedal, it is gone. We cannot recover it. So that was an interesting sort of performance practice thing that we had to work on to actually make it work. But I think he got it, yeah. next piece out of C. You can see a pattern already. I know. Again, mostly C's, this time with scalar patterns, but this time, rather than just little tiny shifts in the EDO, I really wanted to see what happens if we go crazy. I don't even know what one EDO is supposed to mean, you know, and up to 2048, at least theoretically in the patch, which there's only so much resolution that media affords you. There's only so much resolution the ear affords you. So, but it gave me interesting timbral effects that I quite liked. So, even though in terms of a functional system, it's not functional, but in terms of timbre, I found it interesting and at least to explore it. Yeah, so those are my tables for the right and the left hand for the EDOs. You can see there's some interesting numbers in there for sure. And all powers of 2 if you pay attention. Yeah, different EDOs for right and left hand. Again, the score by itself, again, as you said before, it's very pianistic. If you look at it, there's nothing that is overly mean about it, other than we are retuning constantly. And the pianist actually with the pedal, as you see the sostenuto pedal changes the tuning. We start with EDO 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. In the first 5 measures, each measure we press the pedal and the tuning switches each time. So depending on how long this is, I might play that hang on.
So here the player is...
He's changing the tuning actively, yes. One called controlled by C or controlled by 2,826 Cs, because there's 2,826 notated Cs in the score. I counted them. This was inspired actually by the third etude by György Ligeti. And if you don't know it, it is the one where the player has to silently depress some keys and then play rapid patterns over them to create intricate rhythmic patterns that are really easy to play because you just do the pattern over already depressed keys. And I was thinking, well, I have a digital piano, I can just instruct the piano not to play certain keys or every so many notes ignore the on message and see what I can do with that. So I create those little, you see those circles, they basically represent, I can say over 30 notes, every 4th, 5th or 6th note you play, everything else you ignore. And I can rotate them, I can change them in real time, just like tuning, so there's all kinds of weird things happening there. Yeah. This is the first and what's the end of the piece. So I'm going to play the beginning and then jump to the end, because at the end you can really see and hear that the poor pianist is working so hard, but there's not much coming out of the piano anymore because of the way the patterns ignore notes, let's call it. And this is also a good example. At the very beginning, the second or third octave he plays, the piano is ignoring, even though it's not supposed to. That's one of those sticky notes I was talking about earlier. And you see it in his face. He's totally confused because it's supposed to play and it's not. On YouTube, so you can listen to the whole thing if you so decide. So I was going to mention something about this. Oh yeah, you can kind of hear how the piano sometimes glitches out a little bit. So again, I don't know if this piano or the software something looking.
And those were the sticky notes.
Yeah, exactly. I have a feeling it is a combination of both things, but I don't quite know yet. I'm running out of time, so I'll go quick. The next piece is the first duo, and is a longer piece. Like those piano pieces, I sort of look at them as etudes. I'm exploring something very specific, huge EDO changes, or in the last one, those ignoring note input, or in the first one, the recording. The next two, they're more pieces rather than etudes. They're more longer. They have a formal structure. There's other things going on. This one was actually inspired by Georg Friedrich Haas, because he was teaching at the Coop for a long time. In one of the rooms were two of his pianos that were tuned to the overtone series for a long, long time before he moved on. Before they disappeared as well, I got to hear them a couple of times. I actually also heard them in Coma. I got to see them live last week.
Mm-hmm. I think he's here, by the way. If you're,
oh, really?
I think he's in Salzburg.
Okay. So I created my own overtone piano with the software. That's the chromatic scale. Chromatic scale becomes the overtone series, but I can retune it live. Right? So that's nice. I can, and then of course the fresco value again with the quarter tone, mean tone, E organ with the extension, extra 5 keys per octave. So this is what I was talking about. Probably don't have the time to play it now, but at the concert we did actually we performed it twice. Once where we played the piano in equal temperament, as written, exactly as written, and then once with the tuning changes. And the square note heads, those are the instructions to change the tuning. So those pitches, they don't sound. There is it's a switch for the software that changes the tuning. And we'll see that again in the next piece. I use the same concept because the pianist kind of was complaining about all the pedals. It is very confusing to use the pedals because at one point I used all 3 pedals to do different things. The sustain pedal was normal, and then the other 2 pedals were doing different things. But it's easy to miss one. There's not much room. So this was an attempt to alleviate some of that, and actually it works quite well. I'm going to skip the equal temperament and go to the mean tone. Or microtonal, I should say. What's kind of nice about this system is that maybe you saw it with one of the pedals. You could actually turn off the overtone piano and play the piano normally. So sometimes it is actually quote-unquote normal piano that's in equal temperament, but then we could switch into the overtone and of course change which overtone series is actually produced.
Excuse me, Martin.
Yeah,
could we go to questions in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I will very quickly go through this because it's the same sort of concept that Alyssa was talking about. I was working with the idea of resonance of the acoustic piano and using the shadow of the E piano to play with that. And it's the same patch we used. So the pedal goes down, you play the note, you don't hear it, you release the pedal and it comes back over, it fades back in. So I'm just gonna play the first couple of notes. Of course, each chord is
Nice.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing your work with us. Congratulations. And I would like to ask if anyone would like to throw the first question. Maybe Alyssa.
No, please not. She's too hard.
Please, Colleen.
By any chance, did you and Alyssa happen to post any of this online?
It's all online, yes.
Cool.
All the pieces, the entire conference, all the yeah.
But the Microtonal Music and Tuning Theory Facebook group, I don't know if you went there, but that would certainly be of interest, I would think.
Yeah, I think we posted some of it there too.
Cool. Thank you.
But I think it's on the, which channel is it on?
Some of it's on Organon and some of it's on Researchlife, but I can actually send the links and then maybe you just follow
yeah.
because on the one channel we have the score followers of, because we also have other people that wrote for us too, so maybe that's interesting.
And one channel, Organon, because I saw these short videos, Organon.
Organon.
Okay,
Yes. So if you look for Organon and or Organon Frescobaldi, then you'll find it. And that's where the whole conference is archived there with all the keynotes and papers and the concerts, and then the score following videos are on the Zeitschleife. This is our Verein.
Yeah, that you found it. Yes.
Exactly.
Martin, of course, in this group last year, the project was Organo Frescobaldi, the title,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, I think these two words were.
Yes, exactly.
It's impossible that I forget that I remember
Yes.
a lot of things. Yeah. Any more questions, please?
Yes.
Otherwise,
What about undertone piano?
Yeah, of course.
Could you imagine this and perhaps tell something?
Yeah, I mean,
like
it
that.
will be easy to do. No problem.
Let's try.
Huh?
It's
Sorry?
interesting. Try it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's really maybe it's too open, but it's fascinating what you're doing with pitch, and I'm just wondering how it might apply to things like rhythm and, you know, just like a number of bars, a number of notes in a bar or whatever, because it seems you're doing some really interesting things with rhythm. And in the touche bloquée piece,
Yeah.
I mean, because we didn't hear very much of it, it's hard to tell, but I guess you must be doing rhythmic things there by turning off certain notes and
Yes.
leaving others
Yes,
on.
yes.
There must be rhythmic processes.
Yeah, definitely. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just no time to
No,
talk
But I
about it
mean-
much. But yeah.
Maybe a couple of sentences on your approach to rhythm.
Sorry,
that's horrible.
yes. If you want, of course.
I'm trying to remember. I mean, this was a couple of years ago now that I worked with these. Okay.
I'm not the only one forgetting things.
No, it's. I mean, there's have been too many pieces in between and other research on top of that. So, the only thing I can say for sure is the inspiration from Ligeti, and that I'm pretty sure that the number of there's two lists. One the possible, like the whole sequence of notes, and then the ones that are allowed to be actually heard. And there was a definite relationship between how long that sequence was at any given time in relation to what the tuning was, to the EDO setting. And there was some relationship between that and then how many notes were actually played. But what that was exactly, I would have to go back and find my notes.
So yeah, sorry to put you
So
on
I
the spot.
can't say for sure at this point. But knowing me, there was a relationship. Knowing me, I don't remember exactly.
Thank you. I also, in one of the pieces, I think it was in Follow the Sea. So are all the octaves tuned differently, each octave, or because in the first piece I think they all remain the same?
Like in all those pieces, the solo pieces, all of them, the keyboard is split in two basically.
Yes.
And each half is a different EDO, or can have a different EDO.
Okay.
So it's not per octave, it is split in half, and top half and bottom half.
Yeah. Okay.
Different EDO treatment.
Yes. There was something missing there that I didn't understand. Thank you. Any more questions, please? Otherwise, thank you so much. Congratulations.